Jamie, a
Oh my God.
17-year-old girl, accidentally travels back in time to 1987, the very period when a serial killer is on the hunt for his next victim. Determined to stop him, Jamie sets out to find a way to fight back and prevent the horrifying crimes that will happen in the future. But how can she possibly? The quiet little town of Vernon carries a scar that never healed. The 1987 Sweet 16 killer murders. 3 16-year-old girls were stabbed to death within a single month, each on the night of her birthday. The killer wore a grotesque smiling mask, stood tall and menacing, wielding a gleaming knife, and then vanished without a trace. That crime carved itself into the town's memory, turning Vernon into a place where fear and nostalgia coexist. 35 years later, the name Sweet 16 Killer still echoes through Halloween parties like an old urban legend, a spooky story to tell for fun. But for Pam Hughes, the girl who survived that nightmare, it was never just a story. Pam was in high school back then, best friends with the victims. After the murders, she became the sole survivor, burdened with an unshakable sense of guilt. Decades later, now a mother herself, Pam lives in constant fear. She tries to protect her daughter Jamie from every imaginable danger, but her paranoia builds a wall between them. Jamie, born in another generation, sees the 1987 killer as nothing more than an outdated myth. She doesn't understand why her mom is so strict, so anxious, so obsessed with control. Then on Halloween night, 2023, the past comes back. As darkness settles over Vernon, a familiar masked figure appears at Pam's door. The attack is swift, cold, and eerily identical to the murders 35 years ago. The killer drives a knife through the door, and Pam collapses in the hallway, her eyes wide open, frozen on the void, where time itself seems to stop. Her death fractures reality, like a small earthquake in the fabric of time. In a single instant, Jamie loses her mother, and with her, the fragile sense of safety she once knew. The police, as always, have no answers. Even in a world full of cameras, data, and technology, the killer vanishes again, just like in 1987. But unlike her mother, Jamie doesn't believe in fate. She believes in logic, science, and reason. And that belief, unknowingly, opens a door through time. One of Jamie's classmates, Amelia, a quirky science prodigy, has been building a quantum-based time machine. While hiding in Amelia's lab, clutching an old photo of her mother, a freak lightning strike hits the machine's power core. In a blinding flash of chaos and light, Jamie is pulled backward, straight into 1987, on the eve of the first murder. She wakes up in a world both familiar and strange. Faded billboards, booming pop music, kids with wild hair and retro clothes. Vernon in 1987 is bright, alive, and dangerous. Jamie quickly realizes she hasn't just traveled back in time. She's standing at the very beginning of the nightmare. And then she sees her mother, Pam, 17 years old. Not the cautious, anxious woman Jamie remembers, but a sharp-tongued, confident party girl, the queen bee of Vernon High. That moment shakes Jamie to her core. The mother she idolized was once someone completely different, rebellious, cruel, and fearless. It makes Jamie question everything she thought she knew about her own childhood. Amid the neon lights and carefree laughter of Halloween 1987, Jamie watches the smiling faces of teens who, in her memory, are already dead. She knows the killings are about to begin, and that she's the only one who can stop them. But changing the past isn't simple. What does it truly mean to rewrite history? And can she fight something greater than the killer himself? The unrelenting gears of destiny that time refuses to let go? As the synth-pop beats echo through the halls, a masked figure appears at the end of the corridor. And in that chilling moment, Jamie realizes she isn't just chasing a murderer, She's facing the same fear that consumed her mother's entire life. The tragedy repeats, and the time machine appears. Jamie stood in the hallway of Vernon High, her heart pounding. Dance posters on the walls, Letterman jackets, the faint smell of cheap perfume, and "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" playing over the speakers. It all felt way too real. That's when it hit her. This wasn't a dream. It was 1987, exactly 35 years earlier, and she had just been thrown into the middle of a killing spree that hadn't even started yet. As soon as she understood what was happening, Jamie tried to find a way to contact Amelia, the friend who built the time machine. But this was 1987. No cell phones, no internet, none of the technology she was used to. All she had was her brain, her memory, and one goal: stop the killer before he makes his first move. And just like in 2023, the cops in 1987 didn't take it seriously. Rumors about the Sweet 16 killer spread around school, but no one really believed it. Posing as the new girl from Canada, Jamie tried to get close to Pam's friend group, the ones who called themselves the Molly Crew. Pam, Tiffany, Marisa, and Heather, the exact girls who would be targeted. Jamie knew their names, the timeline, even how they would die. But how do you warn someone about their own murder without sounding insane? Meeting 17-year-old Pam for the first time was a shock. She was confident, icy, a little mean. When Jamie slipped up and mentioned future deaths, the whole group just laughed it off like a stupid Halloween scare. Pam laughed the loudest, eyes full of challenge, completely different from the anxious, overprotective mom Jamie grew up with. That's when Jamie realized her mother used to be someone very different, and maybe that reckless teenage version of her had something to do with why the murders happened in the first place. That night, when Jamie went to the police to warn them, the first murder still happened, exactly like in the 2023 case files. Tiffany was killed in her own house while opening her birthday presents. Jamie ran there, but only caught a glimpse of the tall figure in the white mask slipping out of the window. History was repeating itself, and she couldn't stop it. After the murder, the police started questioning everyone. Pam and her friends were dragged in, and Jamie, a girl with no real identity, suddenly became suspicious. So Jamie turned to the only person who could help her. 1987 Amelia, the younger version of her future scientist friend, a shy girl obsessed with physics, doodling ideas for a quantum time machine in her notebook, the very blueprint for the device Jamie had used. The two of them started working together in secret, using Amelia's early sketches to try to recreate enough power to open a portal back to 2023. But there was a problem. They needed an energy surge as strong as the lightning strike that sent Jamie back, which meant they'd have to activate the machine on Halloween night, the same night the Sweet 16 killer was supposed to strike for the last time. While all this was happening, Jamie slowly uncovered what her mom had never told her. Pam and her friends weren't just innocent victims. They had bullied, humiliated, and torn down an Asian girl at school, enough to cause real trauma. That girl was connected to the killer, or might even have been the reason the killing started at all. History, it turned out, wasn't just tragedy, it was consequence. When Jamie confronted Pam about it, it blew up into a real fight. Jamie forced her to admit what she'd done. For the first time, Pam saw a piece of herself in this girl from the future, someone who refused to let the past stay buried. And right in the middle of that tension, the killer showed up again. This time, Jamie didn't run. She chased him through the Halloween fair, into haunted houses, down dark hallways lit by flickering lights, synth pop blaring in the background. The whole thing looked like a neon nightmare. He was fast, smart, and somehow always one step ahead of her. When he was about to stab Jamie, Pam, the 1987 Pam, jumped in and saved her. In that moment, Jamie understood. Even as a reckless teenager, her mom was still someone who would fight. And in that same moment, the timeline began to shift. The police found new evidence, things that hadn't existed in the original case. New people became suspects. Jamie and Amelia raced against the clock, trying to finish the time machine before Halloween night was over. Outside, Vernon was glowing with lights and laughter, but in the shadows, the same bloody loop was starting again. Jamie paused, looking out at the crowd where the killer could be hiding under any mask, and she whispered, "It's not just him killing people. Time kills us too. Every time it repeats. Every time." Meeting her mother's youth and the spiral of realization. Jamie slowly began to realize that traveling to the past wasn't just a mission to stop a killer, it was a journey to confront the truth about who her mother really was. Pam in 1987 was nothing like the cautious, soft-spoken woman Jamie grew up with. The one who always said, "Don't go out at night," or "Be careful who you trust." This Pam was the definition of teenage rebellion: teased hair, bright red lipstick, shiny tight jeans, and the kind of confidence that made everyone look at her. She loved attention. She feared no one. But beneath that bold surface, Jamie saw something deeper and far more fragile. Pam was just a girl terrified of being forgotten, of losing validation. That fear made her cruel. It made her part of the same system of bullying that would one day trigger tragedy. Jamie tried to get close to her, tried to convince Pam and her friends to change how they treated others. But this was 1980s America, a world ruled by the cool kids culture, where cruelty was considered humor and empathy was weakness. Jamie's warnings only made them push her away. Pam laughed at her, calling her paranoid for living in some imaginary fear. The clash between generations, mother and daughter, grew sharper each day. Jamie, coming from the future, carried modern ideals: compassion, accountability, and understanding of how cruelty echoes through time. But for Pam and her crew, it was all just a joke. "Everyone does it in high school," they'd say. "If you're not tough, you'll get eaten alive." Jamie stayed silent, realizing those jokes were the seeds that grew into murder. She began to see through each of them. Heather, the loud one, hid her pain from her parents' divorce. Marisa lived under constant pressure to be perfect. Tiffany, the first victim, had secret tension with a teacher. And Pam, the ringleader, wore her confidence like armor to hide her terror of being ordinary. Jamie realized they were all victims of an era that treated feelings as weakness. One night, while the group hid in a classroom planning their next party despite the murders, Jamie broke. She told them everything about the future, about her mother's death, about the Sweet 16 killer still out there, and about how Pam would be the only one left alive. The room went still. Heather laughed, Tiffany rolled her eyes, and Pam, furious, called her sick for trying to scare them. But when Jamie left, Pam couldn't shake the look in her eyes, a look that knew. That night, alone in her room, Pam opened her closet, stared at her unopened birthday gifts, and for the first time in her life, she was genuinely afraid. Meanwhile, Jamie and Amelia worked relentlessly to finish the time machine, but as the hours passed, history began to warp. When Jamie saved Tiffany, Heather became the next target. The past wasn't being erased, it was rearranging itself. And the more Jamie interfered, the more unstable time became. Small things began to change. The school logo, street signs, even fragments of Jamie's own memory from 2023 started fading. She began to wonder, if she kept rewriting history, would there even be a version of her left to go back to? The closer she got to her young mother, the clearer one truth became. Pam was never born good or bad. She was shaped by her world. The 1980s American dream was all gloss and glitter, but underneath it pulsed anxiety, competition, and the desperate need to look perfect. Then came a rare, tender moment. After nearly being killed in a parking lot, Pam broke down, crying that she'd never really been happy. Jamie hugged her, mother and daughter, meeting across time, finally understanding each other. But that peace didn't last. In the distance, under the red glow of a Sweet 16 party sign, the killer returned. And this time, he knew exactly who Jamie was. He followed her, every move, every breath, as if he knew the future too. And in that crimson light, Jamie realized the past and present were colliding into one, a spiral where the sins of one generation were demanding to be paid in blood. Confronting the killer and the paradox of time. Halloween night, 1987. Neon pink light washed over the sky above Vernon as waves of costumed townspeople danced through the streets to the pulse of synthpop music. But in the middle of the celebration, Jamie felt reality cracking apart. Time itself was glitching, like an old VHS tape rewinding, flickering, distorting. She remembered what young Amelia had warned her. The time machine didn't just open a door, it was tearing the fabric of history apart. It all began with the changes Jamie made. When she saved Tiffany, when she stopped Pam from leaving the party, when she revealed the killer's identity 36 years too early. Every choice created a new branch of reality, and in one of them, the Sweet 16 killer was no longer acting alone. Jamie's very existence had inspired a copycat. That was the first twist in the loop. At last, in the echoing hallways of Vernon High, Jamie came face to face with the original killer. Doug Summers, the gym teacher who had been humiliated and fired because of rumors Pam's group had spread. Behind the cracked white mask, he confessed he killed to take back his dignity. But as Jamie tried to change the ending, the truth became even darker. Doug wasn't alone. Cornered in the hallway, she heard another voice, another presence. A second killer emerged, the older brother of a future victim, someone who knew. Jamie was from 2023. He said he came to make sure history stays intact. In that moment, the line between hunter and hunted disappeared. Jamie, the girl sent to stop a killer, had become the reason the killing continued. Pam, finally believing her daughter's story, burst in to help. They ran together through the glowing corridors, past flickering posters and strobing lights, their footsteps echoing like a heartbeat through time itself. As they reached the lab, young Amelia was preparing to activate the time machine using the school's power grid. If it worked, Jamie could return to the future, but only one of them might survive the blast. The tension peaked. The killer was closing in, every footstep louder than the last. Pam shoved Jamie toward the lab door and shouted, "Go! Save all of us!" In that instant, Jamie saw her young mother, not as the arrogant teenager she once was, but as the brave woman she would become, someone willing to sacrifice herself to make things right. The machine exploded. A blinding flash swallowed everything. Then, silence. When Jamie opened her eyes, she was lying in the same room, but it wasn't the same. New walls, new tech, outside the window, Vernon 2023. She was back. But not in the future she remembered. Out on the street, people laughed and talked. The town was peaceful, untouched by tragedy. Her house stood whole again. When she opened the door, Pam stood there, alive, healthy, even younger somehow, her eyes soft and bright. Jamie threw her arms around her, but then she noticed the photo on the wall. Her family picture was different. In the center, where she used to be, stood another child, a different version of her. The time machine hadn't just brought her home. It had created a new reality, one where everything was fixed, but not quite right. Time had given her mother back and stolen Jamie's own place in the world. Outside, she found an older Amelia waiting for her. Neither of them spoke. They both understood. Jamie hadn't just changed history, she had changed herself. The killer was gone, but this world no longer belonged to her. In the final moment, Jamie caught her reflection in a mirror. On the desk behind her sat a cracked white mask, the Sweet 16 Killer's mask. No one knew where it came from or why it still existed in this reality. But as Jamie looked closer, she saw something chilling. In the fracture of the mask, a reflection of her own eyes, cold, distant, and unfamiliar. And one last question echoed in her mind. Can you really change the past without becoming part of it? Darkness swallowed the light, and the loop began again. When the present changes, and the price of memory, when the blinding light from the roller coaster time machine engulfed Jamie in that 1987 carnival, she thought she had finally won. Doug Summers, the original killer, a bitter hall monitor whose rage began after his girlfriend Trish died because of Pam's mean girl clique, was dead. And Chris Dubasage, the true crime podcaster from 2023, who traveled back in time just to turn the Sweet 16 Killer into viral content, had been torn apart in the spinning chamber before her eyes. Two origins of evil, both erased. By every logical rule of time travel, that should have been the end. Kill the murderer in the past, and the future stays clean. But Totally Killer never plays by simple rules. The film stays true to its core idea. You can change the past, but the present you return to might not be the one you hoped for. When Jamie opened her eyes, it was 2023. But not her 2023. Vernon looked brighter, cleaner. No more murder tours. No memorial walls. No town defined by trauma. The 1987 killings never happened, and the town had grown up without its collective scar. The first thing Jamie did was run home. The door opened, and there she was, Pam, alive, younger, happier, a version untouched by 35 years of grief. It was everything Jamie had fought for, the one thing she thought she'd lost forever. But within moments, her joy twisted into confusion. This wasn't the same mother she remembered. This Pam had lived a different youth, a different life, and had become a different woman. In this new timeline, because her friends never died, Pam never lived in fear. She became social, outgoing, even lifelong friends with Lauren, Amelia's mom. Jamie's father looked healthier, more confident, more successful. Everything was better, except Jamie. Because when Pam lived, fell in love, and married earlier, her family changed. She and her husband had another child first, and so Jamie, as she once existed, was never born in the same order. In this version of reality, Jamie discovered she wasn't Jamie anymore. Her name was Colette, and Jamie was now her older brother, grown, married, with a daughter of his own. She was home, yet somehow out of place. She had saved her mother, but in doing so, she'd erased herself from the life she knew. That was the quiet price the film demanded. To save the past, she had to sacrifice the purity of her own memories. Lauren, now an accomplished scientist, the only one who still remembered the full timeline, handed Jamie a notebook. Inside was a record of all the changes Jamie had caused. Pam and Lauren had been best friends since the late 80s. Kara, the Asian girl who once suffered from bullying, was now Vernon's police chief, and famous for her special brownies. Jamie's brother, the new Jamie, had a wife and a 3-year-old daughter. And Lurch, the awkward janitor who once lurked in the background, now ran a gaming company and a charity against school bullying in honor of his sister Trish. Jamie's actions hadn't just saved her mom. They had reshaped Vernon into a kinder town where the root of its violence, the death of Trish, and the culture of cruelty had been healed from the source. It's the movie's cleverest message. If we fix the roots of pain, revenge doesn't grow 35 years later. But the Sweet 16 Killer wasn't gone entirely. The film leaves one haunting thread dangling. Chris Dubasage, the podcaster obsessed with fame, still existed in this new world. Now, instead of chasing murder stories, he'd become a monk in India after witnessing his father die at the hands of his own future self. Lauren admits, "We still keep an eye on him, just in case." It's the movie's sly reminder: time can be rewritten, but human nature rarely changes. Ambition, ego, the hunger for notoriety, those are timeless. What makes the ending brilliant is how it circles back to Jamie's complaint from the beginning, that her mother's generation always kept secrets, and that silence was what doomed them. In this new timeline, nothing is hidden anymore. Pam admits what she did as a teen. Lauren is open about building the time machine. The town no longer glorifies its tragedies or hides its guilt, but honesty comes with a price. Jamie's world is better, yet foreign. Her mother is alive, but doesn't remember dying. Her best friend remembers 2 timelines, while Jamie remembers only one. She looks around at the laughter and peace she created and realizes she no longer belongs to the world she saved. The world